Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk all things hockey are your hosts, Brad Crisco, Ryan Hanna, and Evan Lobsinger.
If you believe in the just win mantra, the hashtag just win bit we've been doing on the show, then you have to believe in the moment that is Jeff Petry being the reason why the Red Wings didn't go down 3-2 in that Tampa Bay game. I don't care how mad you are that he was in over Mata when Walman came back. I don't care how mad you are at how bad he's been. I don't care how mad you are about his deployment. We've talked at length on the show about, what Jeff Petry's been able to do on the ice and whether or not he should have all that ice time. Our opinions aren't a secret. But if you believe in just win, results are the only things that matter as the Red Wings push for the playoffs, then you have to embrace the glory that is Jeff Petry's goal line clear to save the game for the Red Wings.
Was that on that shift where they were pinned in their own zone for over 3 minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
Why do you ask, Brad? Someone might also notice the side of the net that Petry was on compared to his position. Don't worry about all that. He's so concerned about the details. We talked at length last episode. The process, for the first time in a long time, it's not about the process. It's just about the results. I don't care how you do it. I don't care if you have one skate on and your helmet on backwards. If you win the game, that's what matters. I think that's what the Red Wings have been doing, but they won the game. That's what matters.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've been on the just win baby mantra because
they haven't been.
It's hard to be on that when they don't do it.
Yeah. They're not doing anything else, and they didn't even do that part. So, yeah, it made it a bit difficult.
Yeah, the just win wasn't there. The process wasn't there. Losing to Arizona twice, and then somehow beat the team that hasn't lost in regulation in a calendar month.
One of the hottest teams in the NHL who's gearing up for the playoffs, like perennial contender, and they swept the season.
In their barn this game as well.
Hockey's so stupid.
That's why you're not out till you're out. I'm ready to be hurt again.
This episode's going to be the primer for the next hurt episode. Yeah. Anyhow, we're going to enjoy the fun while it's coming. Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, folks. Here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, and lots more. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we're going to be talking about Detroit's one but massive game that they've played since the last time we recorded, a win against the Tampa Bay Lightning, all the storylines from that game, the special teams being special, Cirelli having to score 3 times for one to count, Perron's clutch goal, Lyon's performance, the goal line save, and lots more. We're going to be talking about the playoff situation, and Detroit has continued to do well in that regard. Not that the bar has been very high, and other teams are now involved, which maybe we haven't been giving enough credit to leading up to this. We'll also give you our opinions on a couple relevant topics that have been happening lately. First is pulling your goalie to try to win in overtime, risking the extra point. Additionally, play-ins. It's been a big conversation is what can play-ins do to increase revenue or increase the playoffs in the NHL. So we'll talk about the whole playoff format. Some various other Red Wings related storylines. I think people have been thinking about Klim Kostin in San Jose and him doing well, as well the way the Red Wings prospects have been performing. A big Michigan State battle was just rehashed with the result going the other way this time. As you can see, Brad's small smirk crawl across his face. And then we'll be talking about some NHL news and more before overtime. Before all that, I want to let you know that this podcast is almost primarily supported by our Patreon supporters. Patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast if you want to join the so-called Dub Club, as Steve Dangle has named it, and that name has stuck. You get access to some really great benefits, like access to our bonus overtime episodes, which record and post right after these main ones. They're a great time. We let loose, have fun, talk about hockey-related and non-hockey-related content. You also get access to our excellent Winged Wheel Podcast Patreon-exclusive Discord community. As well, you're automatically entered into all of our giveaways. For example, this season, we gave away 2 tickets to every Red Wings home game, almost all of them going directly to our Patreon supporters. So again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Also, one more thing, if you want this special edition Winged Wheel Podcast Grand Rapids Griffins hat that I'm wearing right now, you'll probably have seen it on Sebastian Cosa's head in any video that he's in. Go to the link in the description to get your tickets to the April 5th Grand Rapids Griffins game. That ticket will also get you this limited edition hat. It's an extra run that we worked with the Griffins to do. This is going to be your only other opportunity if you missed the Winged Wheel Podcast night event with the Griffins earlier this year. So again, go to the link in the description. It's on April 5th. So the Red Wings went into the Tampa Bay game, and we said last episode that all of their games from here on out are going to be tough, in terms of context, but also the opponents that they had, and Tampa Bay was no different. And yeah, they had to bring their A game, and yeah, they needed the save, and yeah, the team defense needed to improve, and DeBrincat needs to be better and all that. But no matter what, you just work on the results. They're going to be grindy games. They're going to feel ugly. You're going to feel like the Red Wings aren't doing their best, but if they get the result, that's what matters at this point in the season. And I feel like this game was a microcosm, like the perfect embodiment of that.
Yeah, 100%. I think you weren't even fully embracing how good they were at 5-on-5 in that preamble. They had a legitimately good game. It was grindy, ugly, all those things, but that's what you need to do as the underdog on the road. They got a lot of key saves from Lyon. They had a really rough first period. I can't sugarcoat that. But at 5-on-5 in the second period, they were carrying it. And then special teams happened.
Yeah.
And the momentum, it went away. But then it came back for a bit. And then, outside of one really rough stretch in the third period, they were step for step with Tampa in the third period as well. So it was good that they finally woke up. It seemed like the intensity in their game ramped up a little bit. Don't know what set it off finally. Maybe a month too late, but hey, better late than never, I guess. And yeah, overall, I'd say they had a strong game, top to bottom.
The thing is, Tampa Bay is a tough team. Like, their special teams weren't that much better than ours by a fluke. Like, Red Wings, I think they had a poor night on special teams, and goodness knows they can't enter a zone for their life right now. But that's by design. Like, think of Florida. Florida's PK was stifling. It really, really hurt Detroit. And you can see them just dominate. Tampa Bay's PK, the way they set up at that blue line, like for a team that's poor at entering the zone, Tampa Bay just walked all over them. And they had their way with it. They have the elite of the elite players. How many major trophies are on there? How many first team all NHL players are there on there? Like, we've talked time and time again, this Red Wings team, even when they can scrape together wins and battle through injuries and illness and whatever else they have right now, the discrepancy in roster is going to show when you play the Floridas, the Tampa Bays, the elite teams of the NHL. It doesn't mean you can't get the result. As you've seen, the Red Wings did what they needed to do to win. And as Evan loves to say in the show, the beauty of the NHL is that the worst team on any given night can beat the best team on any given night. Look at the Edmonton Oilers. A lot of nights they're one or the other. But still, like, the parts of this game that didn't go well for Detroit, I agree with you, Brad. They were almost, you don't want to say they're expected. You have to try to outplay that. But in general, it's not shocking as to why that was the case, why Tampa Bay really exposed them on special teams. So I agree. I think they had a really, really strong game.
There were definitely moments where Tampa decided to put the pedal down a little bit and they became a world-class team, and you could tell there was a large gap between the Red Wings and Tampa, but doesn't matter at the end of the day. They were able to get their goals when they needed them. Hell, they even scored a goal early in a period for once rather than being on the receiving end. So, yeah, this time of the year, given what the stakes are, a win is a win is a win.
So the first period was actually scoreless, and you've heard me say this before. If you're going to escape the first period scoreless with what the Red Wings have gone through, that's a positive result in and of itself. And as Evan alluded to, the Red Wings scored early in the second. Kane essentially scored a fadeaway backhand, which it was equal parts impressive from Kane to put the puck where he did, and also kind of like, really, Vasilevsky? That's the one you're going to let through? But hey, it works. DeBrincat, I think, was the one who looked off that shot, and that's what you were talking about, Brad.
Yeah, I think Vasilevsky was screened on the shot too. If you watch, it looks like he didn't see it come off Kane's stick before it was going past him. But hockey being such a stupid sport, this goal was the perfect example of it. I audibly yelled out loud, "Why?" when DeBrincat passed up that shot.
And it was a great play to enter the zone and steal a puck by DeBrincat.
Yeah, 100%. And he's walking, right down Main Street. Yeah, there's a defender between them, but he's a good enough shooter. He can get it past a pair of shin pads. And passed it to Larkin, who was a complete non-threat from where he was when he received the puck. DeBrincat was in a way better position. Larkin takes a really low percentage shot that had absolutely no chance of going in. And the rebound just happened to pop right to Patrick Kane, because hockey is a stupid, random sport.
And we love it. That's why we love it. Patrick Kane, that was his 18th goal, already has 42 points, 18 goals, 24 assists, and that's in 43 games. Still almost a point per game player. Cirelli scored, and...
Which one?
Yeah, here's the thing. Cirelli scored shorthanded, and that was the only other goal in the second period that counted. Because that was Cirelli's third time putting the puck over the line. The first time was deemed goalie interference. Essentially, the puck went in after someone crashed right into line. That was an obvious call.
Was it, though?
I think it was.
He didn't go in of his own volition. And
I don't buy that the interference from the defender was enough. I think that player was barreling towards him.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it was a no goal, but I've seen that type of play stand a lot of times. So I was surprised Tampa didn't challenge. I don't think they would have won it, but what was the punishment? Putting Detroit on the power play? Oh, no.
Well, they got to stay so short-handed where they're deadly.
You want to know the difference between that one and the other ones that you're talking about, though, Brad? Calling this no goal is more convenient to the result that I want. And that's what so the refs actually did that one correctly.
Yes.
And then Cirelli scored another goal, and the Red Wings went on the power play, and Detroit gave up shorthanded opportunities. Really, it was Tampa Bay's power play.
I think they had 3 2-on-1s against Detroit, that one penalty.
Yes. The first one, Cirelli scored, and that's the one that was called off because it was under Lyon's leg, and they just couldn't prove definitively whether it was in the net or not. Tampa Bay celebrated like they were, but the refs, didn't make a call. And when they actually went to go announce it, they said the call on the ice is no goal, which means then you need definitive proof to overturn it. So, whether or not the Red Wings escaped with a lucky one, that's one thing. And then Cirelli wastes no time. It was the third odd man break or just rush going the other way on Detroit's own power play, and Cirelli just sniped it. He didn't even get close to the net on that one. He was just no, I'm firing it from back here, and scored. And it was hilarious that it was Cirelli 3 times. It was ugly from the Red Wings. That was poor, and you knew Cirelli was just no, I'm scoring this.
It was truly a sight to behold. The same guy 3 times. What are the odds of that? Were they even 5 minutes apart in total?
It doesn't feel like it. It feels like it was one after the other. And again, it was like clockwork. The Red Wings couldn't enter the zone. Tampa Bay clogged up the blue line so perfectly, turned the puck over, and went the other way. That's a team where there's nothing left to chance. They are game planning, and there's structure to every single thing they do. That's a team that has been a cup winner multiple times, nearly 3, and they've been doing this for so long. They are just a well-oiled machine, and you can see it on display. On that play specifically, you can see it on display.
Yeah, the systems that Detroit employs, at least on the power play break-in, it's clockwork. It's very machine-like. It's the same thing every time. Doesn't work. The machine's smoking and on fire. But every time they try the same thing, I think he brought it up, but I kept thinking that entire power play when Prashanth did the math on, would they be better to just fire this into the goalie's chest and take their chances on the faceoff? And
50-50 chance. Is it better than their zone entry?
Yes, 1,000% yes. There's no debate in my mind. That's what they should be doing at this point.
When you're in a game and it's not working so consistently like that, don't do it for no reason. If you can do the whole DeBrincat out to Kane on the boards and try to get control and the team's letting you do it, yeah, of course. You walk in with the puck if you can. But the Red Wings couldn't. Anyhow.
The saving grace for the Red Wings, if they do make the playoffs, power play opportunities go way down.
So more 5-on-5 play.
So there'll be more 5-on-5, less chance to have breakdowns like that.
Shane Gostisbehere shaking in his boots. He's whoa.
Yeah.
What am I supposed to do? That's not fair. He scored 5-on-5. The drought is over. Anyhow, the Red Wings went into the third period, and they actually took the lead. The sentiment around the fan base and watching the game was, you don't really get the vibe that this is the electric fun Red Wings that we're going to win this game. But to go back to what we talked about last episode, you kind of can't expect that every single game, and you have to try to get results even when that's not how it's going for you. And credit to the Red Wings, even when they maybe didn't have momentum, Robbie Fabbri scored after JT Compher crashed the net, really, and the puck popped out. Fabbri, obviously, one of his best skills is, crashing the net, getting to the front of the net at the right time, and just blue collar, right in the blue paint kind of goals, and he did that. And also credit to Simon Edvinsson, who made a great defensive stop and got the puck going the other way. So really, all 3 of them factored onto that play, even though Fabbri and Compher were the only ones to get points on it. But the Red Wings went up 2-1 on that.
That play was all Compher. That was something we did not see from the Red Wings in March. He just had this aura about him on that rush. I'm getting to the net. You can't stop me. Mm-hmm. He should have been stopped at least 3 times before Fabbri got that puck, and he just willed it to the net. And we've talked about how listless the Red Wings have seemed for long stretches of the last 4 to 5 weeks. And to see someone just quite literally get a goal through hustle and sheer determination, no skill on that play, just I'm trying to overpower this defenseman and get to the net, and he did it. And then, like you said, Fabbri, Johnny on the spot. It was refreshing to see.
When you're trying to score on Vasilevsky, who even more than Bobrovsky seems to just hate the Red Wings and is unreal against them, you're not going to be scoring on snipes or shots from the perimeter or anything like that. You need to get to the dirty areas. And frankly, that's playoff hockey. You talked about power play opportunities going down. And another thing about playoff hockey is they're ugly goals. They're grindy goals, and it doesn't matter whether it comes from Patrick Kane or Austin Czarnik. Like, the puck just has to cross the line, however. So, you have to be driving the puck to the net. You have to be crashing the net. And again, it starts at the other end too. So it's important. If you can force a turnover, much like Tampa Bay did to Detroit on the power play, like Edvinsson did to get the puck going the other way, all that adds up. I really hesitate to say this because every time I do, something bad happens, but I have so much time for JT Compher. Even when the Red Wings seem a little listless or a little out of it, oftentimes he's one of the only guys that's doing the right things, and you're like, oh, quietly he had 2 points tonight. Big fan of what JT Compher's brought to this team. And then on the power play, Tampa Bay, their power play is
stupid. It's absolutely insane.
The puck moved from the right side to the slot to the left side where Stamkos shot, unimpeded. And there were a lot of Red Wings in the way.
The deception that Kucherov has on the right-hand side is insane. Actually insane to watch.
There's no question that he's the best player on that team.
No.
He's 40 points ahead of Brain Point. It's not even up for debate.
If Vasilevsky's having like a Vezina god tier season, then of course that's a conversation, but he is just sick to watch.
Yes.
If his name was just, Cole or Eric or Connor something, he would be way, way more prevalent in who is the best player on the planet conversations. Because everyone mentions, McDavid, Matthews, McKinnon, sometimes Makar. Kucherov's not in there enough. And this guy is this good without having the wheels of, McKinnon or Makar or McDavid kind of thing. Like, he is just the way his brain works and what he does it looks so effortless. Like,
I went back and read scouting reports of him before he was drafted, and it was all sitting right there. All of them are like, this guy is offensively dynamic, can score in every type of way, makes people look silly. Maybe doesn't have elite foot speed, but can make do with his deception. And he somehow slid. And Tampa was able to draft him. It was crazy to watch.
Al Murray in Tampa Bay is the most underrated, maybe single non-GM asset in the league. I know he's very well regarded, and Yzerman actually tried to bring him over to Detroit. Tampa was smart. Whatever they did to keep him, good on them to do it because, man. Anyhow, so that was 2-2. And in between then, the Red Wings had opportunities earlier in the game. At some point, actually, Raymond made a great play to get the puck in front. There's a defender who impeded the path of the puck to some degree, but Rasmussen was in tight. It probably would have been hard to get the puck over the pad, but Rasmussen essentially just stuffed it right into Vasilevsky's pad. Good save by Vasilevsky, too. You could see Raymond was frustrated going to the bench. It was a good opportunity that he created. But that also, in between the second and the third goal for Detroit, was when Petry cleared the puck off the goal line. And that was, if they make it, man, that clip is rolling way more than people like. He genuinely
intro video to the playoffs.
Oh, God. It is. I don't care that he fanned once on the puck. He cleared it. Puck's out. He did what he needed to do.
I don't even know what to say.
You knew that was going to happen. Because when Walman came into this game, which was huge for Detroit, Walman being back, he's still playing hurt. You can see it on him. But when Walman came into this game, someone had to come out, and Derek Lalonde made the decision. Walman's left-handed. He took Ole Mata out. Ole Mata's left-handed. Ole Mata's not been great either. Has he been better than Petry? I'd say yes. But, the Red Wings and their right-handed defensive woes continue behind Seider, and that's the decision they made. It's not the one I would have made, But I was like, I don't really care as long as this can push Petry down to like deployment that's more suitable to what you need him to do, which is what it did. He wasn't top 4 in defensive ice time. So all in all, it worked out. But the moment all the vitriol and the hatred and the just frustration came out with that roster decision, you knew something ridiculous like that play was going to happen. And hey, in the spirit of just win, you got to embrace it.
If the Red Wings make the playoffs, you have to look back to that moment and say, what if, or what could have been if that thing went in. As much as I'll say hate that Jeff Petry gets online and in the hockeyverse, I mean, you got to give him credit for saving that one.
He did. He did it. And you know what? The Red Wings won in regulation in the end.
Which is huge for the chase.
Yeah. It might come down to regulation wins, and Detroit needs every single one they can get right now. David Perron scored off the backhand. He was in the right place in front of the net. Compher with a clutch faceoff win. Seider, it got to the net, and then Perron buried it on the backhand. His face when he scored was every Red Wings fan. If you want to know why the Red Wings are so insistent on bringing David Perron back, I know we've talked about you'd want him back, but at what price? The reason he's loved in every dressing room, and the reason every coach and GM loves him, and the reason the Red Wings want him back is because he plays games the kind of way that makes a difference in moments like that. Forget the excitement and energy of him scoring because he knows the gravity of the situation. Obviously, that guy is a huge leader in the room, maybe the Red Wings' biggest emotional leader at times. The amount of times you've seen him win a board battle or knock a body off the puck with 2 feet of ice to work with, or score that huge backhanded goal, that's the kind of thing that Perron knows how to do. And I know it's it's almost a silly phrase at this point, but he plays the game genuinely the right way. And I don't mean just old hockey man thinks physical is the only good. No, he plays the game in that 2 foot by 2 foot box where battles are won and lost. And he does it well, which is why he's been able to make an impact this late in his career with having the foot speed of Evan after 18 holes and a bag of milk in him.
That's right.
Yeah, the intensity level he brings in moments like this, too, is huge. Again, we keep referencing at the Red Wings being listless through large parts of this stretch, but someone's got to get him fired up. And you score a huge goal like that, yeah, you want to jump through the glass, and he can't do it very quickly, so I don't think he's going to be breaking any panes of glass going into it. And yeah, again, you want him back. I think everybody's all for it. Nobody's going to sit here and say, don't bring back David Perron. It's going to come down to dollars because they're not in the best cap spot right now. And he is, creeping up on 40 years old. So you got to keep that in the back of everybody's mind. But in a perfect world, yeah, it works out and they can bring him back on a 1-year deal because he can't skate.
He'll be 36 to start next season.
Yeah, it's not old.
That's extremely old.
Crazy how Brad's tuned. I would say that's ancient, practically dust, we might call it.
Practically dust, yes.
The other thing I really like about David Perron, too, is he plays with an edge. Just because he's a good French-Canadian guy doesn't mean he's, just all skill. He gets under guys' skin, and that's a dynamic the Red Wings will definitely need should they make the playoffs. So, yeah, I agree with you guys. If the dollars are right, then I have no problem with bringing David Perron back. He is what he is at this point in his career. Obviously, he's a half point per game type producer, but you need guys like that. And I think David Perron's an excellent addition to this team.
Yeah, and the point Brad was making before I so rudely interrupted him with thoughts of his own mortality, which is why he's staring into space right now, is that, yeah, he's going to be useful. It has to fit into your dollars because, 36 doesn't mean he's done, but the drop-off's going to be noticeable year over year. What I will add is that if and when Perron decides to retire, I hope the Red Wings can, outbid St. Louis or whatever other team, even though I think Perron's heart's in St. Louis. If the Red Wings can keep him on their staff, that's a guy that players really look up to and rally around, and that kind of impact that a player can have on your young guys it's just so valuable. You see what he said about the octopi? Max had his great article on the tradition of octopus throwing, and he was he wants to see more octopi. So if you're going to a game,
David Perron has requested it.
He scored you that game-winning goal against Tampa Bay. You have to oblige the man. The Red Wings ended up sealing it, scoring the empty net goal. Lucas Raymond scored his 25th. And Lucas Raymond has scored a couple now tricky empty net goals where he's had to step around a defender. And I don't want to say it was like an elite superstar play, but he's danced around Hedman and got down for the empty net goal. You don't make that, Tampa Bay keeps puck in the zone, and they might have an opportunity there. So underrated but skilled play by Lucas Raymond.
It's more about just remaining calm under pressure that makes a play like that impressive.
And if Victor Hedman commits to making that play at the blue line, Victor Hedman thinks he's getting that puck. So for Lucas Raymond to sort of beat him, bring the puck back to him, and clearly beat Victor Hedman is just another strong praise to Lucas Raymond's season.
The regulation win over Tampa Bay, they swept the season series over Tampa Bay. If you offered me at the start of the season, the trade-off, you're not going to win 2 key games in a week against Arizona. It's going to be embarrassing, but you sweep the season series against Tampa Bay. It's going to feel icky, but you're going to take it. But that's the trade-off. The Red Wings swept the season series against Tampa Bay. That's huge. Those are all Atlantic Division points, and I don't think they're catching Tampa in the end, even if they make the playoffs here. But that was a game where a lot of people would have had a red X over the calendar if you're trying to schedule calendar wins and losses.
I think it was last Wednesday we were talking about, okay, they've got to go into Florida, into Tampa, play 2 of the best teams in the league, and they have to try and get, half the points out of that. And they managed to take Florida to a shootout. They obviously lost, but got the point, and then a regulation win against Tampa. I don't know how you don't think that's mission accomplished after those 2 games.
Again, this bug that's going around the team too, it's not done. I think, I don't know anything for sure, but even just seeing videos of Derek Lalonde, everyone on this team looks like they're under the weather right now. Again, every team in the league is probably going through injury and illness to some degree, but for this team to battle and grind out that kind of win, that's huge for their confidence. It's huge because other teams have entered into this race, as we're going to talk about. So that was, a test of resilience. And it's funny that I use that word after we've ripped on how March played out so often. But again, just win isn't a joke completely. It's you just need the results, and however you can win those games. Oh, your special teams blow, grind it out, get the goals by driving the net however you need. That was a massive result for the Red Wings. So upcoming, they have the New York Rangers at home on Friday, and then the Buffalo Sabres at home on Sunday, and we'll be back with you after Sunday. So those are going to be 2 big games. Buffalo obviously just had a big win, and the New York Rangers are, one of the best teams in the league, but there's no more, I don't buy into strength of schedule or anything at this point in the season anymore. It's just every single game you have to go out there and put it all on the line, whether it's Lyon or Reimer or Net or whoever. You got to play as if you're playing the Tampa Bay Lightning and play your guts out. So we'll be back with you after those 2 games, and then they have the Washington Capitals on Tuesday at home. And then after that, the Pittsburgh Penguins, which some of us might have glazed over before. I think Evan brought up last episode that could be a big one, and could be a big one this time again. And then the Toronto Maple Leafs on the road, and then they have a home and home against Montreal to end the season. So lots more upcoming for the Red Wings. Okay, we are going to take a quick break and then come back to talk more about the playoffs. But first, we want to let you know that this episode of the Winged Wheel podcast is proudly brought to you by Labatt Blue Light. Created in 1983, this premium light Canadian Pilsner is a delicately balanced beer brewed with Cascade hops and a blend of malt. It's fresh, crisp, and brewed to the highest quality standards. There's a little bit of Canadian kindness in every sip of Labatt Blue Light. How did it get in there? They're Canadian. That's how. You can spread the love yourself by sharing a Labatt. And when you do share a Labatt, you're not just sharing a beer. You're sharing an experience that'll pair with anything from hockey to a hoedown. So next time you're watching a hockey with your buds, be sure to share a Labatt, because while you might not all root for the same team, although we on this podcast do hope you're rooting for the Red Wings, you can all enjoy a Labatt Blue Light. We honestly love going to games in Detroit and seeing Labatt being the beer that fans clamor for all over the arena. It's a reliable beer and great to have in your hand when celebrating a goal. So head to the link in the description of this episode or the one you see on your screen to find Labatt in stores near you today. You must be 21 or older, and as always, enjoy responsibly. All right, welcome back. The wild card playoff race as it stands. The Red Wings are again the first team outside of the wild card playoff spot. They have 82 points, which matches the Washington Capitals and their 82 points at the time of recording. They have one more game played than Washington, which is why they're below, but they also have 2 fewer regulation wins. So even if they had the same games played, they'd be below Washington. The Philadelphia Flyers are currently in a divisional seed in the Metro. They have 1 more point than Washington, 83, and 1 more point than the Red Wings. The Red Wings have a game in hand on Philly, and the Capitals have 2 games in hand on Philly. So the expectation here is that the Capitals will probably pass Philly. They have the same regulation wins, and so it gets into further down tiebreakers. But again, Detroit's really chasing Philly and Washington for that second wildcard spot. I think it's more likely to be Philly in the wildcard spot and Washington in the divisional seed, but we'll see how it plays out. Neither team is really seizing anything at the moment. In terms of the last 10 games, Washington's hotter, but they also lost a key game. So still, that's who Detroit's chasing. Right behind Detroit, the New York Islanders are 1 point behind, same games played. They have fewer regulation wins, and so Detroit has that going for them, but Islanders are hot on their tail. And the Pittsburgh Penguins are 3 points behind Detroit. If
they didn't have Sidney Crosby, I wouldn't even think about it.
But they do, and he is continuing to be Sidney Crosby. And if they can figure things out for this last stretch, all you have to do is get hot for a stretch of like 7 games. 7 games.
Literally 7 games.
We've seen the Red Wings get hot for stretches of 7 games and ice cold for stretches of 7 games. So we know that this can happen. This isn't out of the realm of possibility that the Penguins could get into this. The Sabres are right behind them, 2 fewer points, but 1 more game played. And I think that's getting to be a little bit too far away. But I really think between Philly, Washington, Detroit, the Islanders, and the Penguins, there's 1 wildcard spot and 1 divisional seed. So you have to imagine Philly or Washington are going to grab one of the divisional seeds. But this isn't narrowed down to just 2 teams here.
The Red Wings have to finish ahead of 3 of those 4 teams. It's as simple as that. Any order of however they finish, who goes divisional, whatever, doesn't matter. If the Red Wings finish ahead of 3 of them, they're in.
I'll say this could go in any direction, but not because everyone's winning out. The whole joke has been this is like, what's the joke that Pete Blackburn made on Twitter? It was so apt. It was like if you gave the Islanders, the Red Wings, the Capitals, and all these teams one knife and locked them in a room, they would just grab it and take turns stabbing like themselves. No team is seizing control of this right now.
Well, that's what's happening for Pittsburgh right now, because every year we see teams go on a stretch of like, not every year, but a lot of years, they'll go like 9-0-2, some insane stretch, and get themselves back in it. Sometimes they make it, sometimes they don't. Pittsburgh got back in by going 4-1.
Just like a normal, just a normal stretch of 5 games. Like a lot of teams will go 4-1 in a stretch of 5 at some point.
Yeah, they had a good 2 weeks, and it turned their entire season around because the only team ahead of them that's like won it all in the last 2 weeks was Detroit, and they won once. Actually, I shouldn't say that. The Islanders beat the Hawks last night, so congratulations to the Islanders for barely scraping by the Chicago Blackhawks.
Between Philly, Washington, Detroit, the Islanders, the Penguins, the Sabres, and the Devils, who do you think has what do you think the best last 10 record is in there?
Did you say Philly? Because it's not them.
No, it's not. They're 2-5-3. That's a spoiler.
If you told me that before Pittsburgh went 4-1, they were 0-5, I'd believe you. I feel like it's going to be like Washington at like 6-3-1 or something.
That is actually exactly what it is.
Jeez.
It's Washington at 6-3-1, Detroit 4-4-2, the Islanders 4-5-1, the Penguins 5-3-2. Again, Philly is 2-5-3. Like those aren't.
The Red Wings are 4-4-2.
Yeah.
I don't believe you. That just feels wrong.
I'm telling you, man, like even watching the Tampa game, people were angry. I'm like, they're tied. But it just feels wrong right now. But that's what this weird playoff race is. It's just bizarro land. And maybe we'll take that as an opportunity here. We've outlined where the Red Wings are. We post on Twitter and Instagram and other places the Red Wings rooting guide. So between their games and other teams' games, how important they are. And it's funny, having Washington and Pittsburgh at this last rush here, like those are going to be massive games, and we know that. Anyhow, that's what the playoff race is. Let's move on into the conversation that's kind of spurred because of how terrible this playoff race is. If you want to call it terrible, it's entertaining at least. The play-in tournament, the whole idea, like one of the more accepted potential play-in tournament or expanded playoff solutions would be the last 4 teams, so the 2 wildcard teams and the 2 teams just outside the wildcard, they essentially go into a little mini 3-game or 5-game tournament at the end of the season to decide who gets the 2 wildcard spots. There's variations where the 2 higher seeded teams get, or even go to 6, and the 2 highest seeded teams get a bye through the first round, let's call it, and the 4 lower seeded battle it out, whatever you want to call it, but essentially making it so that more than the 16 teams have an opportunity to get in.
I like the way the NBA does it. If I were to do a play-in, I'd do it the same way. The 7 seed plays the 8 seed. The 9 seed plays the 10 seed. Whoever wins the 1 game between the 7 and 8, you're in. You're done. You're out of the play-in. Congrats on your playoff spot. And then whoever wins between the 9-10 then plays the loser of the 7-8 game.
They have another opportunity.
And then the winner of that goes in. So if you're a 7 or 8 seed, you'd have to lose twice to miss the playoffs. So it is still weighted in your favor. Whereas if you're a 9-10 seed, you have to win 2 in a row to get in the playoffs. So it is statistically more likely the 7 and 8 seeds end up making it because you have to win 1 of 2 games.
Where do you fall in play-ins?
No, thank you.
You're
not interested. What is happening right now is the reason this should not happen. Because I'm watching teams eat glue and stick their heads in the sand. No, I'm not interested.
Here's the thing, though, and here's the argument where I made jokes about it. This actually hasn't changed my mind at all on the play-in. Of the 4, we'll call it 4. We won't include Pittsburgh for the sake of even math here. The 4 teams battling for those final 2 spots right now, 0 of them deserve to make it, but 2 of them are going to anyway. So if you're worried about a watered-down playoff bracket and having garbage teams in the playoffs,
they happen every year anyway.
Tough luck. You're getting 2 of them this year anyway. I still haven't heard a good argument against the play-in beyond someone just saying, 16's enough. It's half the league. It's an even number. Nobody cares about even numbers. It's better for revenue. It makes the regular season more interesting. And it makes the playoff race more interesting because now...
I agree it makes the regular season less interesting.
I think, no, because now you have 3 races leading into the playoffs. You have the teams that not desperately, but definitely want to finish 1-2 because then you're getting the tired teams going into the playoffs. So all of a sudden, those 2 seeds become a little more important. You have a race for the 6th seed because you want to stay out of the play-in if you can, and you want to get one of the 6 guaranteed playoff spots. And now you have the race for the 10 seed. Or if we do it the way the NBA does, you have another race to get to the 8th seed. So now, not only are we looking at the quote-unquote playoff cutoff line, you have interesting dynamics above that where teams who might be sitting comfortable, like Tampa right now in 7th place, they have a hell of a lot more motivation to try and go on a heater at the end of the year to bump Toronto out of the 3rd Atlantic spot because they don't want to be in the play-in, even though, let's be honest, Tampa would probably clock everybody in the play-in too. But it's more entertaining in the regular season. The play-in itself, I don't care how bad the teams in there are, it's going to be entertaining as hell. We as Red Wings fans, if we were offered a play-in right now, is anybody turning it down?
Evan might.
I'm not interested.
You're a man of principle.
I'm a man of principle. I've watched this team.
But they're going to be playing another very bad team, so they might still get in the playoffs. They get the privilege to get waxed by the Rangers or the Panthers, whoever. But at least if we want to play in, that'd be something to hang our hats on for the summer. But the big argument for me for the play-in, and the one that I don't understand, like, why the NHL is so opposed to this, it's more money. You want the salary cap to go up, make more money, and a play-in round would do that. It's a gate-driven league. I don't care what teams are in the play-ins. You know those buildings are selling out. And it creates more interest in the race.
Arizona says, respectfully, you don't know what I'm capable of.
Yeah.
Terrific point, and I will concede that one. So the other 31 markets would sell out. But yeah, it's a win-win-win. And the only argument of the teams suck. Well, shitty teams get in the playoffs every year. There's not 16 good teams in the NHL. So what's expanding it by a couple more?
Okay, I have 2 points to this. First is, I think it's arbitrary, but life is arbitrary. We're here for a cosmic speck and then we go away. So it's all arbitrary. I think half the teams making it competitively makes sense. I think if more than half the teams make it, it feels like, college intramurals. Like, I don't know, it just feels...
Reminds me of my grade 6 track and field days where they're like, we're not going to give out ribbons for first, second, third anymore. It's all about doing your best.
But also, that's a temporary argument because
we're going to be 50 teams next year.
We're going to be at 34, 36 within the next 5 to 10 years.
Which is why this whole the semblance of an argument here is pointless. They are going to do it when they get there. My other thing is fully agree on salary, fully agree on, it's the revenue. I'm starting to wear down on those points. At some points, I think it's necessary to have an honest conversation. Fans shouldn't care, but we're covering this league. We have to have an honest conversation about the importance of that. But I'll tell you, like watching jersey ads and watching helmet ads and watching the board ads and watching, everything having a money line on the bottom ticker and everything like that. At some point, I'm like, when does the revenue not come at the expense of competitive balance? I don't necessarily think this is that conversation, but I don't think it's crazy to make the argument that it is, because it does drive me insane when it's like, oh, it's good for revenue, it's good for excitement. Yes, but you have to be careful to not make it contrived. And again, I'm just stating that as a possible counterpoint here. I'm kind of iffy on it. I probably lean towards, I understand it's coming and I can see it being a lot of fun. But that's something that comes to mind for me, and I worry about the league going down that path. Yeah, and it's not perfect, but the actual benefits far outweigh the, you're right, everything is arbitrary, but like the arbitrary lines. And you look at other teams like Buffalo, for example. I'm not going to reference Detroit because obviously we've been in the midst of it, but Buffalo hasn't made the playoffs in like 2 decades. How many times have they finished 9th or 10th? And how much does that change the dynamic, the vibe in their fan base? How long has it been since Buffalo's been?
I think legitimately they haven't made it since the Winnipeg Jets came in.
That's terrible because that is one of the 12 seasons.
Yeah.
So be better. I don't know what to tell you.
Well,
they're trying. They're trying, man. Have
they tried? I'm not sure they have.
But the reason it's important, and I'm arguing Brad's point here, is that is legitimately the best hockey viewership market in America, bar none. Every single time, Buffalo's one of the most hockey-centric. Like, they watch the Stanley Cup Finals more than most other cities.
So then why do we need to play in if they're already watching? I don't understand.
That's a great point. They're de facto Canadians.
The other thing, if this is going to go through, the NHL has to go back to 1 to 8 seeding in the conferences.
100%.
Because the average fan trying to figure out the wild card with the play-in.
Is this the average fan in the room with us right now?
They're going to have to go to NASA to get the math done because it would just be a convoluted mess, and nobody wants to try and figure that out.
Could you imagine Philly not being in the play-in because they're in the 3rd Metro seed, and then Tampa's in the play-in? Yeah, that you'd have to go 1 to 8 if you were going to do this.
Okay, hear me out. You go to the play-in. You also implement a 3-2-1 point system. And that system, to summarize quickly, 3 points for a regulation win, 2 points for an overtime or shootout win, and 1 point for an overtime or shootout loss. So there's 3 points handed out no matter what. There's not a magical 3rd point that appears if you go to overtime to a shootout, which is what the case is right now.
I'm in favor of that regardless of if there's a play-in or not.
Me too, but I just think that's too many. I think it's unrealistic.
I know. The NHL is not a forward-thinking league. It's a pipe dream. I'm aware.
And that 3rd point, like the loser point as it's called right now, it does artificially keep the race closer too.
Well, the Islanders have 15 overtime and shootout losses.
Drives me nuts, man.
15.
It drives me nuts looking at the standings and seeing that, and you're like, wow.
They're essentially under 500. They lose more games than they win.
To quote the most ancient member of the Winged Wheel podcast, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And there's been years where Detroit's had 1 million of them. I don't know. I understand that I'm starting to get, in my own little echo chamber here by advocating for that. I do one thing, and this is, does it matter? No. But I don't want to count the play-in tournament as playoffs. Does that make sense? Like, do you remember during the bubble season, they counted that extra round as playoff? That, to me, did not make sense.
Yeah, no, the playoffs is still going to be your 16 teams, your 1v8, your 2v7. All you're determining is who's getting labeled as the 7 and the 8.
Yeah.
And you're creating an extra layer of entertainment, and you're giving a little bit more hope to teams that otherwise might not have any. This is a league of tanking, and it's bad, and it's awful, and we've had to suffer through it, and that's not enjoyable hockey. But how many teams who are sitting in the 11-12 seed and who are objectively bad, but might actually have some reason to watch?
Yeah.
Even if it's a long shot, be like, hey, we're 1 10-game, or in this race, 5-game stretch away from getting right back into this. We get a hot goalie, someone goes on a heater, you have a Sidney Crosby on your team, and you're never out of it. And the more teams you have blatantly tanking, the worse it is for the league just in general.
Mm-hmm.
So again, all the reasons that this would benefit not only revenue, I think it makes the regular season way more entertaining in a number of ways.
I think it's coming. We'll see how.
Not according to Gary Bettman.
Yeah.
God bless his soul.
You know what? Gary's a lawyer. He says up until the 11th hour, he'll never change his tune on something. Jersey ads being one of them. Everything, money speaks, and Gary's job is to make the most money possible for the owners. And we've all seen what the owners will do for more money.
There's going to be 1 year where the 9-10 seeds in each conference are going to be the Rangers, Penguins, Hawks, and Kings. And he'll be like, we're doing it this year. We're implementing it right now.
Yeah. Leafs, Bruins, like he's like, I'm literally staring $25 million in gate in the face.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen all the goalie pulls in overtime? The current rule is if
two.
Well, it's two more than what we're used to seeing a lot of the time. So for those who don't know, the rule is if you're in overtime and you lose, you get a point. If you're in overtime and you pull the goalie, except for on a delayed penalty, but you pull the goalie in overtime to try to win, you sacrifice or you are essentially betting that loser point. So if you get scored on with the goalie pulled, which has happened, you don't get your loser point anymore, and the other team just gets their 2 points. And it's funny because it's really just been Minnesota who's needed to win games against like the Nashville types and whoever else.
Well, they did it against Nashville and Vegas, the two wild card, well, not anymore, but the two wild card teams while they were playing them.
Yeah, scored on Nashville, Vegas scored on them, so it's 1-1. And it's been an interesting discussion because I think it's a fun rule. But then, it didn't take long for people to go a step further to say, well, if you needed that point so bad, why don't you just do this in regulation? I get 4-on-3 gives you a little bit more space, and I think it's a little more dangerous because if you've played, you'll know having 3 defenders on the ice is tough. It's harder to go 4-on-3 than 5-on-4. That's one argument, but why not try that at the end of regulation? Try to go 6-on-5.
So when they did it against Nashville, I think they were far enough away from the deadline that the 1 point was significant enough to justify trying it and getting a little risky, and it worked out for them in that case. And Nashville gaining the 1 point, yeah, they still had enough runway. They just needed to get ahead of them, like in terms of how many points collected that night. The Vegas game, given where they were in the standings, that they were basically out of it. They needed a miracle. That's where it would have, in my mind, they should have went in regulation. Because on two fronts, you're chasing Vegas. They were the number 8 seed at the time, I'm pretty sure, or pretty close to it. Every point they gain is one you lose.
Yeah.
So if you get to overtime, you've already just given them one. It would have made way more sense to try it in regulation. And the other thing with trying it in regulation is if you pull your goalie with a minute and a half left trying to tie that, Vegas pumps one into the empty net with a minute left, you still got a minute to tie it. Not likely, but in overtime when you lose, you lose. So I like the effort. I appreciate the creativity. I'm a big, big fan of this in general. I prefer they do it in overtime versus not at all, given the position they were in. Because they knew if they lost that game to Vegas in any fashion, it was over. Their playoffs were done. So I respect it. I like it. I just think on the second one, yeah, they should have done it in regulation.
It is fun to see teams take that risk, though. Some might say that's another, point to the whole 3-2-1 point system argument, but we've already hashed that one out.
The number of people, myself included, who learned about the risking of the overtime point.
Oh, yeah?
It was crazy. There were players in the game who didn't know that.
Reminds me of the 49ers, a bunch of the 49ers not knowing the overtime rules in the Super Bowl.
I think that happens every year, doesn't it, in NFL?
Well, it's different. Like they've recently changed overtime rules in the playoffs, and I say recently. The passage of time might be messing me up. It might be a few years ago.
No, I can tell you the exact game that caused the change.
I forgot it's the Bills.
I can tell you the whole reason that exists.
I was on your side.
Yeah, Josh not getting the ball in overtime after being on that heat. But I digress. I'm not talking about the Bills today anyway.
Well, they all get 4 or 5 years of 1% top tier education, so you'd think they would have known all that.
That's not the 1% value I thought you were going to reference there.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Some Red Wings news. The Trey Augustine season is over. Michigan beat Michigan State 5-2 in the rematch. Obviously, Michigan State got the better of Michigan in the most recent game that we're thinking of for the Big Ten championship, but that was obviously tough to see Trey Augustine out of the tournament, and it's never good to see Red Wings prospects not play more games. But the Michigan win was highlighted by Frank Nazar's absolutely filthy play in a clutch moment. A 3-2 game, a 1-goal game on that stage was, again, I'll say Frank Nazar's gone to the enemy since the draft, so you don't cheer for him too hard now, but he's a fun kid to watch.
Yeah, and in the third period of a 1-goal game, no less. And the play was just nasty. A right shot coming down the left side on a 2-on-1, rather than trying to make a tough backhand pass through the defender. Just says, nah, pulls it through his legs, tweener, sauce over to Brindley, top shelf. Come on.
Insane.
That's sick stuff. That is absolute sicko behavior.
Imagine someone trying that in Game 7 of the conference finals in the NHL.
John Tortorella, whether or not he was the coach of that player, would be sprinting to the ice. So Michigan won. Condolences to Eric Friony, Daniela Bruce, our other Michigan State Spartan fans. Hey, look, as Michigan fans, we're obviously going to say go blue. We're going to be a little annoying about this, but it's not Ohio State, so we have some decorum here. If it was Ohio State, then my God, we'd be grave dancing like crazy. And Michigan State, they just obviously got the better of Michigan too. It's amazing when that rivalry is good. So Michigan State hockey, man, they're going to be back. And even Trey Augustine said, this team's going to be back. He actually said we're going to be back, which makes you think, is Trey planning on going back to Michigan State? I know his performance is going to dictate where he's going to go, but I wonder if this is going to be.
Oh, he's almost certainly going back. I'd be shocked if he would have jumped to pro next year.
You think so?
Yeah, well, first of all, look at the Red Wings organization. Where's he playing? Because the Griffins' net's going to be Cosa's. He could go to Toledo in theory, but if you're going to go to Toledo, you might as well stay in the NCAA.
And you have to like the program, too, in the stage he's on. So
exactly.
You don't hate it at any which way. So the Frozen Four is going to be Michigan, Denver, Boston College, and Boston University. Shai Buium on Denver is of note for the Red Wings, but those are obviously 4 excellent programs. So we'll see how that one goes, and we'll allow ourselves a little go blue here.
Go blue.
You guys seen the Klim Kostin thing? How he's going off, so to speak, in San Jose? He's doing well.
You could not pay me to pay attention to the San Jose Sharks this year.
We paid attention at the beginning because it was very notable. But Klim Kostin has done well for himself with the San Jose Sharks, and a lot of people are saying, was this an error by the Red Wings to let him go? And look, I like Klim Kostin, and I wanted him to work out for the Red Wings, and I think he was doing really well to start. But Klim Kostin's getting a lot more minutes. He said, what's the difference between these 12 games in San Jose where you already have 4 goals, 4 assists compared to the 33 games in Detroit where you have 3 goals, 1 assist? And he's basically will smile and say, I'm getting more minutes. That makes sense. He's not a guy devoid of offensive ability, but it's just different when you're not playing on a plus team. The games are lower stake. You're seeing the other team's worst goalies more often. You're not really competing with other forwards for ice time as much. Of course, you're going to get bigger minutes, and it still takes someone to convert. It's only 8 points, but it's still 8 points. But it didn't take long with the Red Wings to see why you couldn't deploy him for big minutes. He had players ahead of him, one thing. And secondly, there was an upper limit to what he could do. When he had the options the Red Wings had, I just don't see him outperforming most, if not all, of the players ahead of him in the lineup.
Yeah, at his age, it doesn't matter how many minutes you're getting. Do something with them.
He's 24 years old.
And he didn't. So, hey, good for him. Happy for the guy. But yeah, he wasn't doing anything here. And who are you pulling out of the lineup for him? Remember, this was during the Red Wings run hot, and they were clicking. You weren't pulling Veleno or Fisher or Rasmussen or Kopp out of the lineup. So Kostin was just the odd man out. And when he was in, wasn't really doing anything to force the issue.
Yeah. Okay. Other Red Wings news, Nate Danielson has, I believe, 4 points through the first 3 Portland Winterhawks playoff games. They're up 3-0 in that series over Victoria. And in terms of recent draft picks, Brady Cleveland has entered the transfer portal, so we'll see where he ends up. Although I do think our one Patreon member will be crazy interested in that. He's named himself Bradley Cleveland, which I think is the funniest possible nickname we could give Brad. In NHL news, Sidney Crosby has tied Wayne Gretzky's record for the most point per game seasons with 19. That is
insane.
That is a sicko stat. Like, talk about sicko behavior. That is what Crosby's doing at his age. And I know there's going to be a lot of listeners going, "Oh, brother, these guys are talking about Crosby," but man, he's going to be on a lot of people's, extended hockey Mount Rushmores. Like, he is going to be very, very high up on the all-time list. To be doing what he's doing at his age, like, obviously Ovechkin is the focus right now, and for good reason. He's going to probably pass Gretzky's goal record that we thought was untouchable. But Crosby he's not. How far down do you go in, like, what, top 10 players in the league, top 15? I don't think you have to go that far down, really.
No, he's top 10 at worst. Like, his team sucks.
He might drag them to the playoffs.
And they're still in the playoff race.
I think there's been I'm not a Penguins historian, but I think there's been quite a few seasons where he's dragged the corpse of the Pittsburgh Penguins into the playoffs, probably in the first couple of years, too.
Like, that first year, I remember they were awful, but he still crossed the 100-point mark, and you knew right away. You're like, oh, this guy is
a superstar.
Yeah. But that record, 19 point per game seasons, tying Gretzky. We love Evolving Wild and Evolving Hockey. They do great work. We subscribe. We constantly quote their stuff, but they just we've all had our little blips on Twitter. God knows I do it 15 times a day, but they just got confused by the wording, I think. So they're like, how is he a point per game player? Like, the season's not over yet. What if he just doesn't get points? They didn't notice that he had 82 points already. Who responds with the, "Are you sure about that?" meme other than Kyle Dubas? Imagine getting dunked on by an NHL GM just memeing you. I honestly I would toss my phone out the window and be like, that's it. I'm never logging on again.
I'd just retweet it.
That's all you can do at that point.
Yeah.
That was the good one of the two "you sure" tweets last night.
Twitter's a weird place, man. Every time I log on, I'm like, what are we doing? Why am I here?
One of them was a GM dunking on some analytics guys, and the other one got a star receiver traded. So, it's a weird place.
Okay, elsewhere in the NHL, Snuggerud was, a lot of people believed he was going to be signing in St. Louis, but he is actually going back to college for another year. Some people... Yeah, the college rule coming into effect.
Is this not his third? This will be his third year? Because I don't think people start to freak out about college free agents until they get in that fourth year.
Yeah, but it'll be his third year, but, in Minnesota, that's a great program too. But...
he could just want the chip, right? They're a good program.
Yeah.
He might just be going back to... St. Louis said, yeah, you could play in the AHL next year. And he's like, yeah, I'll just go back to school. Then maybe I'll go straight to the NHL after that.
Anyhow, there's more to talk about in the NHL, but why don't we jump into Overtime in this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast. Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast if you want to support the show. Again, the giveaways, the bonus episodes, the Discord, and lots more, some of your benefits. You allow us to produce shows like Expected by Whom, hosted by Prashant Iyer and Sean Shapiro. You also allow us to continue to improve this show and make it bigger and better, and you allow us to support the Jamie Daniels Foundation. It makes a big, big difference to us. So again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast if you want to support the show. The Mexanadian says, just wanted to say that Edvinsson is just good. Edvinsson is good, man. They're putting him out in empty net situations. They're putting him out on the PK. Edvinsson he's good.
He is clearing that subterranean bar this defense has set for him.
Yes. I understand there's been a lot of benefit coming from what he offered Grand Rapids this year, and I think that's very important, especially with how they're going right now. I can't imagine a world seeing Edvinsson now that he can't have been a plus player for the Red Wings all season, but hey,
bold take.
He's up now.
Well, circling back to the Kostin conversation, at the trade deadline episode, we said the whole reason they might have got Simic in return in that trade was Edvinsson insurance.
Yep. Hockeytown Racing Academy says, what exactly is interference and why is it a penalty? Seems stupid to me. Oh boy, would Mike Babcock era Detroit Red Wings love you. They ran so much legal interference, it drove other teams insane.
I will say this. If you allow interference in the NHL, this would turn into the most boring sport in the world in a real hurry. Because nobody would be going anywhere and doing anything.
Which is why the sport had to undergo lockouts like they did in 04-05, and they changed the rules to stop the grab and hold and interference plays. Go watch old Peter Forsberg clips. Go watch old Mario Lemieux clips. They would get mugged.
The Mario Lemieux ones are particularly spectacular. One, he's got so many clips of breakaways with literally two guys water skiing behind him, and he still scores. How many more superstars could there have been if that wasn't a thing?
How much talent was just clutched and held away from putting up production?
With no clutch and hold in the 90s, does Pavel Bure score 90 goals?
He's making Mount Rushmores. Peter Forsberg, like,
oh man. Oh my God.
Yeah, there's a lot of players.
As a Red Wings fan, this is the argument for the clutch and hold of the 90s because I would not have wanted to play Peter Forsberg without it.
Yes. But yeah, interference is when a player doesn't have control of the puck and you try to impede their movement or play on the ice in some manner. That's putting it loosely. There's different situations where you can get somebody on. A lot of it is it is one of those penalties where a referee has to use some discretion. You'll see a lot of defensemen run interference by like cutting off a lane.
I was going to say every dump in would be an interference penalty then.
Yeah, but if you do it black and white rules. A good rule of thumb is if you're interfering with a guy and it's a gray area, if you stop moving your feet, you're going to get called. And if you keep moving your feet, you'll always hear coaches say this, just move your feet. If you're holding a guy, you're in a situation where you've interfered with them intentionally or not, move your feet. Otherwise, you're going to get called. Okay, moving on. Adam Lang, longtime patron, says, my buddy and I have been arguing about the upcoming Seider and Raymond contracts. I'm of the mindset that both of them have proven to be solid players and potential superstars for us and deserve to be paid. He doesn't believe Yzerman will want to give big dollars in max term to young players. I think he's crazy, as Raymond and Seider are the two types of players you do give big money in max term to. I know similar questions have come up before, but just looking to get your take on the situation, if anything in your mind has changed for both of these players. For the record, I'd like to see max term for both, and I would hope around 8 to 9 mil for Seider and 7 to 8 mil for Raymond.
8x9 for Seider, 8x8 for Raymond. Call it a day.
You are correct. I will say, in general, your thinking is what it takes in the modern NHL, because if you have a player who's on an upward trajectory, we have seen athletic primes happen around anywhere from 23 to 26, but productive primes go all the way, depending on the position, call it 24 to 29. Like they're not going to be negative players or trail off in a bad way. Really, through age 30, you're getting the best of what they can offer you on the ice as they learn the game and their bodies are still near or up there in their athletic ability. So if they're on that upward trajectory and you pay them now, you're essentially fighting off or weaponizing the inflation that's going to come in the cap over time, and you use comparables now compared to when players are more handsomely paid later. So yeah, in general, that's what you should do. What I think your friend may have a point, the situation where they could be a little bit right is Yzerman might be not so keen on the max term depending on one thing or another. I don't think that's the case with this one, but I don't think it's crazy to say that he wouldn't absolutely love the max term. And they're in a tight cap situation, so there could have to be a partial bridge here in some respect. Johnny Cleaver says, been reminiscing recently on some Red Wings historic moments. What's your guys' favorite or most memorable moment you got to see live on TV or an in-person game?
Oh, man. I was born in the 80s, so I got to live through the glory years of the 90s and obviously all the way up to 08. There is so many. It's got to be something from a cup year, right? Like McCarty's goal comes to mind immediately watching that live. Obviously not in the building for it, but watching that live on TV was insane. The cup handoff to Vladdy after 98. Game 7 against Colorado in 02. Igor's triple overtime against Carolina in 02.
The two that come up for me are the triple overtime, and you want to know what? It's the Patrick Waugh Statue of Liberty that Shanahan ended up there.
Comes up.
I remember where every single one of my family members was sitting on our couch in the basement, like our couches in the basement, like my brother and I on the floor laughing. That to me is one of my favorite moments. And then the fans singing na 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 on the 7-0 game, like those two really stick out in my mind. Okay, moving on here. JM Rhapsody says, I don't know about the rest of you, but seeing Bob Duff's article was very satisfying as a fan. Yzerman reading the riot act to his coaching staff makes him look more like a fan than a GM, and I like it. Craig Berube is an interesting choice, but I'm not 100% certain he's the guy. He did have God mode Jordan Binnington when he won the Cup in 2019. So the context here is that there was an article recently about Yzerman essentially reading the riot act, or as it was phrased, to players and staff about their poor performance. And I think that makes sense. There's been speculation about Craig Berube, but I don't know that comes from anything concrete. I haven't heard anything in that regard. I don't mean to question anyone else's sources, so to speak, but I think the actual substance of that article was the Yzerman was pissed at the team. And that's very believable. Like,
good. I hope he is.
Everyone was sucking. Nearly everyone top to bottom was sucking, and that goes to the coaching staff too. The team wasn't performing. It doesn't matter how much I will say, like, if you're going to be mad at the coaching staff, you also have to be mad at the GM, and I believe that. But there's certain times where the GM has to go into the room and say, wake the F up, or we're going to have to start to make changes. That's part of the job. That part's believable. Like, I just don't think the coaching change part is necessarily where we're at yet. It still feels like you're grabbing 1 month. It's too small of a sample. There's a lot of contributing factors, and I think it goes. Yzerman has the safest GM job in the NHL, really. But you're really going to question the coach in year 2 when he's had this to work with?
They're 1 point out of a playoff spot with a game in hand.
In April. We're talking about April playoff potential.
In year 2, Newsy's job is not at risk yet.
There's changes that need to be made this offseason, and I'm sure Derek Lalonde, after his second year of being a head coach, is going to work to improve. How he's going to do over the lifetime of his career as a coach, I mean, on balance, removing yourself from like this forest that we're in right now, the progress has been there, but there's also changes that need to happen in this roster in the offseason. I'm not saying neither of them are culpable in this mess. I'm saying if one is, both are, in my mind. Jack's dad bleeds green, says, firstly, go green. Sorry for your loss, Jack's dad. Says, secondly, hot take incoming. Larkin is coughing the puck up quite a bit lately. I feel like he's trying to make the quick ticky-tack passes that Kane makes, even if he's failing at it, and it's resulting in more giveaways than Walmart on Black Friday. I wouldn't consider Larkin tough by NHL standards, and while he's the linchpin to this current team, I feel he's more movable than Seider or Raymond. In an alternate universe where Larkin was getting moved, who is Yzerman replacing him with that elevates his team? What would you do? I don't think he's more movable than Raymond. I just can't imagine a world where you're moving Larkin and this team gets better.
No, it doesn't exist.
We just saw what happened in March.
And we didn't talk about it during the episode, but the one Cirelli no goal where Larkin was the chase on the power play, like trying to catch up to him, you can't tell me that guy isn't playing on half a leg right now.
He's hurt.
He cannot move.
Yeah.
Not only did he not look as fast as Cirelli, he looked plainly slow.
Yes, and that's not Larkin. That's decidedly the opposite of Larkin.
And that might be why he's trying to move the puck a lot more, because he does not have the legs to carry it right now.
And it's not just top speed, like short bursts. If you're in pain,
those are even harder.
Yeah, short bursts, like those first 3 steps they call it. Like if you don't have any strength, you're not moving a lot. So yeah, you dump the puck, because if the space closes out, that's when you're turning it over. This team is Larkin with one leg is better than no Larkin at all, but it's definitely not full health Larkin right now. Udalali says, if Yzerman is able to dump some of these bad contracts as well as sign Seider and Raymond to deals, how hard of a push do you think he makes to sign Reinhart, even if he makes it to free agency? It'll cost more to sign him here than Florida due to taxes. Are you comfortable with the 7x10 or even 7x11 to land him? We have to outbid to land talent now, otherwise it's the mushy middle mediocrity.
I'm the first one to sit here and bang the table. They need high-end talent. This guy scores 50 for the first time in his career, and I think he's about 30 years old, give or take. There are not enough flashing red signs in the world to say stay away on this one.
He'll be 29 near the start of next season. Yeah.
Great player. Love the player. He's probably got 2 or 3 more really good years in him. I'll be shocked if he ever scores 50 again. I'd be floored if he scored 50 in Detroit after leaving Florida. And you're not signing a 29-year-old then to a 7-year contract. Like, no chance.
He currently has 19 more goals than his previous season high and 2 fewer games played. So in 78 games in 2021-2022, he scored 33 goals. So he could essentially 20 more goals than his previous season high. That's a big difference.
Great player, not a 50-goal scorer.
He is.
Regularly.
Yeah. I think the Red Wings need high-end talent, and I'm willing to stomach a lot of ugliness at the top end, but I can't even have these conversations until you get rid of the ugliness in the middle right now. I understand that's the hypothetical that was put forward, but you can consciously overpay 28, 29-year-olds and pay for a lot of ugly years and kick that issue down the road. That's where I differ from you. I think I have a lot more stomach for it than you do.
When you're in the middle of your window, not about to enter it.
What if you're trying to push to enter the window?
No, because...
See, that's where I disagree.
But look at all the teams that have had perennial success over the years. The Tampas, eventually Washington. It took so long to enter from when they entered their window to actually getting to the peak. If the Red Wings window opens, which it won't, but let's say it opens next year, they're not winning a cup in all likelihood for 5 or 6 years. You think that Reinhart contract's going to be worth it by then? No chance. When you are routinely winning playoff rounds, getting to the conference final, maybe a cup final, and you're like, it could be any year now. Yeah, you do whatever you have to do to get talent on that team today. Worry about the rest later. I'm a huge, huge believer in that. But you have to be in it. The Red Wings should not be signing any 29-year-olds to significant contracts until they've at least won a playoff round.
This is a great offseason argument. We can't be bringing this up this late into the episode. So we'll put a pin in that. I actually think what any GM should do is just bring a name and the proposed contract to Evan, and he'll just look at it and go, no.
I agree. They should also do that and pay me for that. I won't even charge that much.
What would you charge him for that? What would you charge to be the...
More than what I'm willing to say on the non-Patreon exclusive version of this episode.
On that note, why don't we wrap this up so we can record the Patreon exclusive bonus content. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you to Labatt Blue Light for sponsoring the Winged Wheel podcast today. To all of our listeners, new and old, if you're new to the show, welcome. And welcome to a playoff push, which is unique for us to say. And if you're a listener of old, this is fun in a weird way. But at least it's April and we're still talking playoffs. If you want to support the show and Patreon's not for you, you can leave the show a rating wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, YouTube, wherever. Leave a rating. It makes a big, big difference for us. And if you want to go the extra mile to support the show, patreon.com/winged wheel podcast. To all of our name level supporters on Patreon, we could not do this without you. Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Brad's Lord and Savior Bradley Cleveland, Glenn Brabham, Croner's Left Knee, Ashley Van Conant, Keenan O'Donohue, Yanni Burgers, Meals on Wheels, Matthew M. Rice, Mo Sider's Fight Card, Admiral Matt S. at the Cheesebag Navy, Carl Brutanen and Analuski, Carl Provy, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nene, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, Dickens, Seider, formerly Marlon Winchester, DJ Denton, God Creatives, Give Blood Fight Probert, Have You Ever Drank Bailey's from a Shoe, Hockeytown Love, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al-Qassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Joel Miranda, Jonathan Miller, Caitlin Wood, Marcus, Matt Keeler, Matt McKay, Michael Edlund, R.A., Red Feather Desert Dogs, Ryan 50, Hannah Hannah, Scott Martin, Shane Patch of Perpetual Ads, Skeletor, Scree and Lube, That's What I Appreciates About You, Walman's Elite Dancing D, Eyes Are Playing Stan, General Andy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, Sam Bankson, AB, Adam Rose, Axels, Sandy Pelika, Bellingham Acid Balls, Brad Simmons, Brian Vasha, Chuck Buffchest, the Tarpless Goon, Commander Ben Barron of the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Layton, Corey Prida, Darren Fick, D-Boss Snip Show, Derek James, Frank Stanley, Gene Sullivan, Griffey Boy, Hoover Brand, Dams, now available in kiwi strawberry flavor. Insert clever hockey pun here. James Pridemore, Johnny Page, Jeremiah Dobo, JM Rhapsody, Jogan Rafferty Fan Club, John Evans Derogatory, John Engels, Josh Yelton, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Les Grossman's Ungodly Firestorm, Linda Hull, Maximilian, Michigan Boy in Avs Country, Ophelia, Red Wing Tar Heel, Steven, the Hodag, the Mexinadian, the Hat 123, Tom Iserplan Respecter, Wings Fan in St. Louis, Scott, ex-formerly Aaron, and your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much. We'll be back with you after 2 big games on Sunday.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hanna WWP, and at Hockeytown Evan.